Hey everybody, it's Tripl-L here to talk about My Hero Academia chapter 328. I don't got many general notes for you this week because I think it's ultimately a very simple chapter. I think when you look at the chapter you could say it's definitely set up because we're just setting up for what we're going to do next. It's actually kind of interesting that we don't really know what the heroes are doing since the last chapter. We're just getting more information as to why, hey, we're not going to have that much time to take a break, which is going to be really interesting. To see what exactly happens next, because if you look at last chapter, you know, Hawks was talking about a preemptive attack. So, going to be really interesting moving on from here with the new timeline, but we'll have to talk more about that. And this brings me to one of the big points for the chapter. I personally found the chapter to be really robust. I really enjoyed it because this kind of talk is the kind of talk I kind of want to see more of just people planning things out, because I actually like knowing what the plans look like and how people are speaking about the things that they're trying to do. So I really appreciate the chapter, and when we get to those parts, I'll make sure to tell you which parts I really enjoy. But this chapter is also one where I don't know how... I got to be really careful with what I think about it going into the future and what I try to predict on it, because I feel this is one chapter where if you have like the slightest mistake in the translation, you might end up with a wildly different conclusion from someone else. And the reason I'm bringing that up is just because the fan translations were so far away from what the official chapter said. And, you know, this isn't to say anything negative about Caleb Cook, the translator. This is more to say about, this is a chapter where if the slightest nuance was not maintained, there are a few critical lines here that throw things off in terms of what exactly certain characters are capable of. So for this chapter, I do love the level of detail that we get, but I'm crossing my fingers that the Viz translation is the correct translation and all the nuance has been observed. And I'll tell you which lines I think are kind of sketchy or kind of scary if they are slightly misworded or if the original intent was not conveyed. So again, fingers crossed. Let's move on. We're going into the page-by-page walkthrough right now. Starting with page 1. This is an establishing shot, just showing this one guy who is clearly a offender who's going to be going out to start collecting females again. Okay, we also see that Tartarus is being destroyed. Now I do want to say, we know that Tartarus extends underneath the surface of the ocean for at least 500 meters. I do wonder if we are going back to Tartarus for anything, if Tartarus is still standing as a underwater prison. Like, it'd be kind of interesting to see the heroes, you know, kind of diving in there. But we'll have to see. They might not be going to Tartarus. Anyway, we go to page 2, and page 2 is pretty much the page that reminds us of who Stain is. You gotta remember, Stain's morals are not based on good and bad. They're based on the society that he thinks he wants. His version of society, his vision of society. So that's why you have Stain killing heroes and also killing villains. At the end of the day, Stain doesn't like villains. He wants a just society, and that guy who's gonna go around abusing women clearly is not going to be creating a just society. So this is just the big reminder of Stain's character for these, well, you could say that page 3, 4, 5, and 2 are the reminders of Stain's character. Just to remember, this guy, he's got a model of morality that ends up helping people sometimes and sometimes screwing them over. Now, page 2 is actually really critical in clarifying some stuff from the chapter where Stain was talking to All Might. That being, here we learned that Stain actually has not heard anything of what was going on outside of Tartarus. Therefore, at this moment in time, he didn't know anything about All Might. Now, you do see later the newspapers. So at the end of the day, Stain did find out about what happened to All Might before he met All Might through the newspapers. So just to make sure again that Stain knew who All Might was, but he was talking about the symbol of All Might and all that kind of stuff. He was being poetic. Anyway, here page 2 just sets up why Stain thought he needed information, which makes sense. That was actually a really good build-up. Good stuff there. We go into page 3 where Stain goes into the security guard room. Here I want to say that I really liked what the author did with Stain's inner monologue, because it reminds you of what kind of person Stain is. Like, look at this description. Clutching something else like a babe in his arms, and then you have another great line. The ragged breathing of a man doomed to die. Stain is very poetic. He's very grandiose. He's very dramatic. And I really like that the author maintained Stain's voice even in the inner monologue. That's just really consistent. That's a really good mark on the author there. I really believe that Stain actually thinks like this when you have little details like this. I also like the dialogue from the man when Stain was grabbing the storage device, that being, why grab this and not a weapon? Like, yeah, why not grab a weapon? So I like that. It really makes the situation feel futile. Like, this guy's just thinking like, all right, I'm going to get out of there. I'm holding on to this. No one's going to want to take it. They're going to take the weapon that's right next to me, right? So even when this guy was dying, he was hoping that he was going to be able to get out of there. He was thinking of getting out of there. We move into page 4. And page 4 is an interesting one for me, just because during the spoilers, this page ended up giving a few problems because it was worded, I think it was something along the lines of, Shigaraki must absolutely not get this information. Now, if you see the Viz translation, we find out, oh, no, Stain, you worked with Shigaraki, you should not be getting this information, right? So, good clarity on the Viz part, and it's just so funny thinking back to the spoilers. If we look at the spoilers and the summary and what the Viz translation says, we actually have quite a few differences, but I do like how much more clear the official translation seems to be right now. Anyway, the rest of page 4 is this guy pretty much just saying, no, I gotta give that to the right people. We move on into Stain saying that the guy's conviction has reached him. And this is another part we have to remember with Stain. Conviction is a really big deal for the character. It's one of his keywords, you could say, because of the way that he talks about conviction. And ultimately, Stain answers it pretty well. Like, he is an ally to the world as it should be, but he's a beast. So that pretty much is saying, like, yeah, he's a beast in his methods, but he wants a better world for everyone. Again, though, he is a beast in his methods. So the entire thing here with Stain's flashback, it's good explanation. I think it's really nicely done with the writing and the dialogue, and I think it's also a very good way to sum up what exactly Stain is. He has very beastly methods, but he has this idea of the world, and he wants to go after it. And of course, Stain helping the dying man, that, well, helping as in getting the message to All Might. That is, I think, consistent with his character. And notice again, like, he didn't bother helping the guy up. He didn't bother escaping with the guy. Like, Stain made a very cold-hearted calculation here. Also probably a very pragmatic calculation, that being, I'm probably going to be able to get this information if I don't have dead weight holding me back. And ultimately, even this comes back to the idea that he's an ally to the bigger picture, but his methods are still beastly. Now from there, we go into page 6. And this is an interesting page. If you look at All For One here, even when I zoomed in, All For One is not... He doesn't have the machinery with him. There's nowhere on this guy's body that you see his life support machinery. Mind you, it looks like he's still wearing his mask. But at the end of the day, All For One should still be on life support. I have no idea what's going on here. It's possible the author just forgot to draw it, or All For One let go of the life support just to, you know, have a great big moment where he declares himself the king of the world. We also see the helicopters going off in the background. You know, that could be Tartarus personnel, but I actually want to believe that that's just villains. It's kind of weird for villains to be leaving before All For One does, but you never really know the timeline on these kind of things. Anyway, Stain saw this and jumped into the water. We move into page 7. I think there's really cool stuff here. So you have Stain establishing that All Might's the only one that he trusts, and then you have Stain respecting what the guard did, and I actually like that Stain says that you have to pick up from what this guard did. And just because that kind of acknowledges, or that just shows that Stain acknowledges that guard's particular sacrifice, even though he did leave him to die. But again, pragmatic calculations. We also see the news in the back, which just says that Stain read all these newspapers. So that's how he caught up with what was going on with All Might. And then we go into the All Might part of this section, where we find out All Might delivered the intel to Tsukachi, and later rejoined them after speaking with Izuku. So okay, pretty good timeline. Now, he went to Tsukachi, not Endeavor and them. That's just something from the previous chapter, whatever. And aside from seeing Tsukachi here looking pretty tired, there's not really much else of value here with their dialogue. Now page 8 is a lot of text, so let's break this down. The first panel of page 8 is to just justify why it's a big deal that they have this data, and the big reason that we are giving here is that Tartarus system is so standalone that we're not going to have any other way of getting it. So this says, okay, great. This was an absolutely essential play that we got done. I don't know who needs this clarification, but it's good that the author is, you know, crossing his T's and dotting his I's. Now the second set of panels is really just here to explain what exactly the data recorded, and in this case, what it recorded were the radio waves. And we find out that they blasted the prison over and over. So that was actually a new bit of information. I thought it was just one pulse or two pulses. Well, it was multiple pulses. So good information there. Here you also see that they know that the vestiges can synchronize with the original, likely because All Might has told them about some of those mechanics. Now, bottom page 8 does confirm that All Might has been talking to them about this, and he pretty much sets up what he knows from his perspective. Now, the biggest thing here is that All Might establishes that it isn't a two-way channel from his perspective. And we have this wonderful little panel here of Aura Might and All Might on page 9. Personally, I love that All Might is talking about this. I think it's really good that we're getting this information. And this is one of those things I want to say, because the Aura Might is always updating with All Might. When All Might dies, if he dies, 100% Aura Might's going to be fully fledged out All Might. That last little bit of information that passes over to Aura Might is probably going to be the thing that fully forms him. This has been something I believe for a very long time, but when you have an updating mechanic like this, it pretty much guarantees that's what we're going to be getting. Now, I do love page 9 because on page 9, All Might points out the one exception to the time that he was actually able to get information from Aura Might, and I just love how careful the author was in these little bits of dialogue. Like when he says, except when I touched the boy, or rather when I was close enough to touch him, because it's like, yeah, you didn't actually touch Izuku. So I actually like that he's taking this into account, like, you don't have to touch him, you just have to get close enough. So really careful, I really like that. The next line I really loved is that he then goes, even if we suppose that All for One can sync to a greater degree than One for All. Now this line is critical because it just shows that the characters are thinking about All for One being different. They're not assuming that One for All and All for One work the exact same way. I actually really enjoy that, just because it's nice that they are saying their assumptions out loud so that you know that they're making assumptions, and you know that they're not taking it as gospel. Now, that said, All Might takes that information and goes in to say, like, okay, you know, they might have a greater degree of synchronicity, but can they really communicate 500 meters below sea level? 500, like, is that really possible? And at that point, you know, I would say yes, that is still very possible, because at the end of the day, you don't know how that quirk works. But I do like how this is working, just because All Might acknowledges that there might be a difference between One for All and All for One. And thankfully, you do have Sansa there just saying, like, stranger things have happened, right? So it's good that they're still talking about this, and it's good that they haven't thrown it off the table. This level of planning and talk I actually really enjoy, especially in a world where there's superpowers everywhere. This is the kind of talk that you should be having all the time at the bare minimum. That said, now, moving on from there, Tsukachi says pretty much, okay, you know, I hear all of that, but the fact of the matter is, this time, they use radio waves to communicate. So it doesn't dismiss anything that the other two have said. It instead just says the reality of the situation, which I really enjoy. We then move into page 10, another great page of how people are talking. Tsukachi says the critical line, we should assume that a manifestation of that quirk, being radio waves, can receive and interpret those waves. And just looking at that line of dialogue, it reminds me of a conversation I was having with the live stream crew, like Jason Thomas and all them, just about whether or not they could process the signals. Is like, yes, no, if you have the quirk, maybe you can process the signals as well. So I like that Tsukachi just went in there and just said, like, yeah, he can receive and interpret the waves. That's pretty cool. I'm in for it. And I like how they find out that there's a conversation going on, that being that it showed up on one of their signal generators. I don't know how exactly, I don't know why they would have this machine there, unless it's one of the ones monitoring maybe All for One's brainwaves or something like that. Anyway, we then go into the critical line, that being the last set of panels, saying, make him complete in 38 days. This is actually one of the critical lines in terms of we better hope this is the correct thing. Because in the spoilers, it wasn't make him complete in 38 days, it was Shigaraki's going to be complete in 38 days. Can you see the nuance there? In make him complete in 38 days, that is specifically a command. That's specifically, hey, I need this done by then, right? The issue with Shigaraki's going to be complete in 38 days, it brings up all kinds of questions like, how does All for One know Shigaraki's going to be complete in 38 days? What metrics were he using? Now, in the make him complete in 38 days, that's a really specific number. Like, you got to really wonder, why 38? Why not 40? Why not 42? Why 38? I got to say, make him complete, that opens up less questions than Shigaraki's going to be complete in 38 days. Now, what's really great is that the characters address the fact that we have predictions, that being the 2 months time period from the day of the Tartarus raid. Now, All Might here says that All For One could have rigged the results we were bound to get as a bluff. Now, my question is, how does he go about rigging those results? But, you know, just look at what All Might's saying, just assume, like, yeah, there's a lot of ways to fudge it. Heck, when I hear making complete in 38 days, I kind of have to wonder, did All For One think that he was going to get listened into, and then he just came up with 38 days to throw the heroes off as well? You never really know. So taking Make Him Complete in 38 days, really interesting, given that the Doctor himself also gave the idea of 2 months. You know, there might be some tomfoolery going on here. During the live stream I had an idea, like, what if All For One has a secret backup lab that actually allows them to accelerate Shigaraki's rest period or something like that, right? It might be something as simple as that. If he has resources, he can pull it off. If he's rigging the results that both the Doctor and Central... Honestly, the fact that the Doctor has it, you know, I want to think that Central Hospital was looking at the right data. They just didn't make enough assumptions. And for the Doctor, maybe he was also, you could say, he was able to lie somehow. It's up in the air. Like, honestly, we'll have to see what the reality is once the situation comes in front of us. One thing I will say here as well is I gotta really question why All For One felt the need to give this message. And here is where we open up a pretty funny thing. The live stream crew and I were making jokes that All For One got caught monologuing. And in a way, he did get caught monologuing because he was talking to himself and everyone heard, and everyone sort of listened in on it. Now, the thing here, there's two possibilities for how this went down, this specific message. And one possibility makes a lot more sense than the other. If All For One sent out this message at the beginning of the raid, like he was just talking to his, like the Vestige and him were just talking when they were in the middle of busting everyone out, I gotta really like wonder, you know, All For One's just breaking down the door. It's like, okay, hey, make him complete in 38 days. Oh, kill a guard, move on. It's just, it feels kind of weird. But if All For One was having this conversation at the tail end when he's outside with Shigaraki's body and Vestige, All For One is on the down low sending a secret message so that Shigaraki doesn't know about it, that actually makes a lot more sense as to why he has to talk through radio waves with All For One. If I have any questions here, I really have a question about when exactly that message came. If it came at the end of the night, I think that makes a lot more sense than if it came at the beginning of the night. Also, it'd be a little bit cooler because it says that All For One, Vestige, and Original are conspiring without Shigaraki knowing. Now we go into page 11, and I still love the way that All Might's talking about things, where he goes into, if we assume they discussed the true schedule, I like that. I like that they are very clearly saying they're making assumptions. In this case, is it bad to make an assumption? No. Unfortunately, the hero, in this kind of situation, the heroes have to assume that both it's the true schedule and probably it's not the true schedule. So what that really does is that it prepares them for the possibility of the true schedule, and it prepares them for the possibility that it's a bluff. I do think they kind of have to be of two minds on this one. So even in this situation, I think just acknowledging that they're assuming this, I think is just such a good move in general. And here on page 11 we find out it's 3 days time. After that we move into the international hero stuff. The first thing I will say is that the people of My Hero Academia have a real fascination with buildings in the shape of letters. Now again, this is a page where on the spoilers you're looking at it and it's like, this seems kind of stupid, but the explanation that you get here in the proper translation actually I think justifies a lot of things. So this page and 13 are pretty much saying why they haven't got an international deployment going off yet. And what I really like here is that all over the world everyone's in turmoil, and I like that they're bringing up that All For One has numerous connections in a number of countries. So that justifies as to why the syndicates might be working together. It actually makes All For One feel a little bit cooler. The fact that he has enough pull to be able to make people work together like this and cause more chaos. Yeah, no, this is really neat, and it really makes All For One feel strong. Like a big joke with All For One is that he only really cares about Japan. But if he can do this kind of, if he has this kind of pull, then yeah, that's pretty neat. And ultimately, I like the idea that sending heroes away, it's going to be a sign of weakness for everyone that's just waiting for an opportunity to strike. So I really appreciate that. Anyway, on page 13, we see some characters from the movie. Also, these characters were in the silhouette of the international heroes. And then we find out from America that the American #1 hero skipped out and just flew off. And then on page 14 and 15, we learn about Star and Stripe, United States of America's #1 hero. Now, let me just very quickly go through the dialogue here. We have the people in the jet saying that they don't really care. They're going to go with her. And then you have Star pointing out that the mission is going to get guaranteed anyway. So it's pretty much she's saying that the country, that the US will know what to do. They'll be able to handle it. And, you know, if I was being like really mean, I'd say like, you know, she kind of left her country. What if people die because she's gone? But really, if it's only the #1 hero and they have like the top 10 heroes still at the States, it'll probably be fine. Mind you, the States are big. So, or if you know the problems Japan has with the countryside, they probably have them in the States as well. But, you know, in terms of upticks in crime, chances are the other top 10 heroes can handle it. Anyway, when it comes to Star and Stripe, she calls All Might her master. You can kind of see that she's a little bit styled after All Might. And you ultimately get the idea that, okay, you know, she's going to go help All Might. She's a nice lady. Now, I do want to talk very quickly about the silhouettes of the heroes. At the end of the day, we have one international hero coming our way, and it's someone that is really related to All Might, so much so that she calls him a master. Now, mind you, is All Might really her master? I feel like All Might might have given her some tutelage. I feel like All Might might have been a role model. I feel like All Might and her might have worked together really well. You know, I'm not taking anything like super seriously, and I'm pretty sure Izuku probably knows about Star and Stripe, and if she has any involvement with All Might publicly, Izuku probably knows about it. The reason I'm bringing that up is because we made funny jokes about All Might having so many people that he worked together with. Regardless, back when the international heroes came up, you know, I was being very cynical about it. Like, we're probably not going to get that many international heroes. Right now, I can't say I expected to get someone so closely related to All Might coming in, but the fact that she's closely related to All Might is very concerning. Just because it's like, if All Might dies, is this girl supposed to be All Might's stand-in? Is that what she's coming here to do in terms of the narrative? I don't know. Now, before I move on into talking more about her, I do want to very quickly just go back to the silhouettes of the international heroes. I prepared for you guys a modified version. So I just want to say, I do think that Star and Stripe, she was on that page of the international heroes, because you also saw Salam there and you saw a big red dot on it. And I'm pretty sure that one in the center is her. Now, I took out the spots that made it look like the silhouette was wearing a helmet. But if you look at the silhouette, you can see the little you can see the little collar pieces right there. The author went out of his way to highlight that, so I do think that's the collar that we see in Stars and Stripe naturally. Also, if you look at the hairstyle, I think the hairstyle fits. And then you look at the pose, it's the same pose, like hands on the hips, and she is very muscular. Now, I gotta say, the silhouette does look significantly bigger. But I also know that Shonen Jump, they have a habit of changing their silhouette designs as time goes on, and I have many examples. Dr. Stone, Chrome, and that gang did not look, or the people of the village that you meet in Dr. Stone, they did not look that way when the Dr. Stone drew them in silhouette. In Shokugeki no Soma, you have a famous example where two characters had completely different designs than when they actually showed up in the manga later on. And in One Piece, everyone knows, like, the shadows of the four emperors or whatnot, those were not really consistent with what they finally looked like. What I ultimately want to say with this segment is that, considering that this design was first revealed in chapter 303, which is, when you look at now, it's been more than 20 weeks. When you consider the timeline and you consider the history of Shonen Jump publications, it's likely that the chapter 303 design was the prototype design for Star and Stripe. It's just too many things here fit to say that was the character that was getting front and center. Now, given that of the silhouette we saw 3 people showing up, I really think this is it. Star and Stripe is probably going to be the significant international hero coming in. I think when we were talking about this, I mentioned that there might be 1 or 2 significant ones, but yeah, I think Star and Stripe will be the significant one here, and she will likely be helping out to replace All Might. Now, in terms of what her quirk could be, well, fact of the matter is, she looks like a big lady, legitimately. Actually, if you look at the silhouette might be correct. Actually, no, because the head would be bigger in proportion to the body. Never mind that. But she's a big lady. Not only that, those things are flying super fast, and she's just standing on it like nothing. In terms of what her quirk can be, All I can say is that her feet must have some kind of super anchoring power because she's stuck to the back of that jet. Other things I would say, because Jason Thomas pointed this out, she must be able to handle lack of oxygen. Her face is not getting obliterated by the force of the wind hitting it. She's able to. She is also probably able to withstand low temperatures. You know, what quirk can that be aside from Horikoshi just doing rule of cool? It could be like a physics phenomena negation quirk or something like that. Pretty much just negate everything around her. But I don't know. She's a strong lady. It might be just it might be a quirk that ends up looking like All Might's for whatever reason. It doesn't have to be one for all, but just like a super strength quirk. Like, I don't know. Right now though, there's a lot of things that she's doing here. Like coming in riding on a jet is a pretty big power play. And like honestly, like thinking about it, right? Like if you think about the actual logistics here, this girl, she got on top of this jet, told them to take off, and she's just like standing there. There's no way it's less than 20 minutes of a flight over to Japan. There's no way. It can't be less than 20 minutes. So she's just standing out there looking at the wide blue sky for 20 minutes on her way there. It's just one of those anime-isms. But it's funny to think about that she's just kind of standing there for like 20 or 30 minutes. Oh my god, if that's a 2-hour flight. I don't know how it would be a 2-hour flight. I'm assuming those things can move faster. I just looked it up. The flight time for LA to Tokyo is like 11 hours. So I'm assuming they're going faster than that. There's no way this girl is just standing out there for 11 hours. But I don't know the flight speed of one of these. Okay, hold on. I'm going to do some math. I'm looking at it. Like an F-14 goes at 1,500 miles. There's 5,000 miles. Oh, sorry, 1,500 miles per hour. And there's 5,000 miles. So even on an F-14, if I'm just taking that kind of distance, that's still 5 hours. Wait, I didn't take into account the 500. That's still 3 hours. Like roughly 3 hours. Definitely more than an hour now that I'm looking at it. So I don't know. If it is, you know what, I'm gonna assume I'm gonna assume flight time is more than an hour. Oh, but you know, it's Hero Academia. Like, has the technology actually gotten better? Are they going faster now? Well, they might be. Can you do 5,000 miles in an hour? That's quite aggressive. Anyway, you know, I'm getting sidetracked. Point is, this girl was standing up there, looking cool for no one, for at least 20 minutes. And I find that really hilarious. Anyway, otherwise, what else can we really say about this? When I first saw the design, I wasn't a fan. It's kind of growing on me now, but I didn't like the forehead and that first little bit of how she slicked back her hair. But again, it's growing on me, and I'm really interested into what this is going to do, and I'm also really interested in what this will do to the narrative. It's just interesting that at the end of the game, you're making such a big move and bringing this character. I can only really hope that she's worthwhile and she doesn't get shafted. I really hope that she comes in with Mirko energy and not, say, Midnight energy, right? So we'll have to see what goes on here. I bet this girl's going to show up in Vigilantes too, if Vigilantes is still running in like a few months. Anyway, everyone, let me know what you thought down below about this chapter of Hero Academia. Let me know what you're excited about. And until next time, I hope you have an absolutely great day.